Imagine you're in charge of a group of men. You're shot in one leg. You're shot in another leg. Then a bullet hits you in the arm. Then a bullet hits you in the shoulder. You're still fighting to keep it going. And then a bullet comes up and smacks you square in the face. And you go face down. Somehow, you survive. We're going to talk about that today, right here at Antietam. Right over my shoulder there is where the Bloody Lane is. It's also where that sunken road is. They all connect there together. And this is where we are going to be shooting from today. One of the absolute bloodiest spots. I decided to do something a little different for this afternoon's video. Normally I have a very well put together, prepared thing for everybody. But being here in Antietam, you only get so many opportunities to create something cool and showcase a place like this. And I decided I was going to run a long video here, just me walking around talking about this Bloody Lane and the things that happen here. And yeah, here we go. So this farmland that I'm walking down right now is a farmland that goes out to the Roulette farm. Behind me here, all across this field, is where the first contact is made with the Confederate soldiers in the sunken road. It is the 1st Delaware, 5th Maryland, and 4th New York coming across this field here. Now, in front of me is where that famed Irish Brigade comes across the field and smashes into the Bloody Lane. There is no introduction needed when it comes to Francis Meagher and his men. They make a hearty name for themselves here, charging again and again across this field, and eventually pushing the Confederates out of this position to take control of that Bloody Lane back there, but at the cost of a lot of lives when they go across this field. When I go across this field, I like to turn the camera around and let people see it. When I take people out here, I like to show them the terrain, the kinds of things that you are going to run into as you're walking around out here as a soldier. These fields, and I'll pan back here so you can see behind me, the hills, they go up and down throughout the entire length of this field. You are going to go ahead and run into blind spots. You're not going to be able to see the soldiers that you're fighting in front of you, and they're not going to be able to see you at some point in time. And eventually you're going to pop up out of nowhere, and then the Confederates on that side over there are going to aim their guns and fire as soon as you are in front of them. That's exactly what John B. Gordon told his men to do. They were out here, off in this direction, in that sunken road, using it sort of like a breastwork. And those Delaware men, Maryland men, and all those guys were coming across the field. And John B. Gordon had told his men to be patient. When those Union soldiers were coming across the Roulette farm here and the Mama's farm across the way, they didn't know what they were about to head into. And John B. Gordon told them, hold your fire until I tell you to. And he said that they could see the eagles on the buttons of the uniforms by the time they had unleashed their fire upon those men. And then the fight was on. They continued to load, continued to fire, and continued to try to kill as many men as possible. Eventually back there, in that sunken road, he had made a promise to Robert E. Lee that they would hold that place at all costs. He ends up getting shot in both of his legs. And while he's standing there wounded twice in the legs, he's hobbling around trying to order people to fight, trying to hold on. Then he gets shot in the arm. So now here he is with 3 wounds, and he's holding on for dear life. And he's fighting to keep his men in place, and his men are begging him to go back. Finally, a 4th shot hits him in the shoulder, and now his men are really frantic. They don't want him to die, so they're telling him to go to the rear of the line so that he can get seen. And before too long, before he could even get out of there, a bullet hits him square in the face, knocks him straight over. And his words about what saved his life is probably the funniest part of this whole thing. James Edward McGee would find himself part of the American Civil War story. He immigrated to the United States in 1848 after being part of the Young Ireland movement. When the movement failed, he had to leave. On October 12, 1861, he enlisted in Company F of the 69th New York, finding himself an officer in charge. At the Battle of Antietam, he would be placed underneath none other than Thomas Francis Meagher. At the Battle of the Sunken Road, Thomas Francis Meagher, after seeing the 8th color bearer fall, the Irish green, on the ground, Meagher then shouted, "Boys, raise the colors and follow me!" McGee of the 69th rushed forward and shouted, "I'll follow you!" He seized the flag and he raised it above his head. Just then, a bullet struck the staff, breaking it. McGee bent over to grab the flag once more, and a bullet passed through his cap. He jumped up waving the flag and cheered on his soldiers. McClellan, from a distance, witnessed the action, but an aide in his staff looked across the field and said, "General, the day is lost. The Irish fly." McClellan, viewing once more, shouted, "No! No! Their flags are up, and they are charging." McGee would be commissioned Lieutenant Colonel 13th April 1864, and eventually would muster out of the Army 11th October of 1864. he would go on to write 4 different books. Before the war, Thomas Francis Meagher actually supported the South. He had deep ties in the South. But he sought a political career, and he wanted a position to be appointed to him by President Buchanan. But because he wasn't given the position, he then turned his feelings towards the South. It was further cemented when the Catholic Church supported the Union cause and not the Southern cause. During the Civil War, he would achieve legendary status while fighting controversy over drinking. After the war, he finally achieved political notoriety when appointed the Secretary of Montana Territory. And in 1867, Meagher was on a steamboat named G.A. Thompson on the Missouri River. July 1st of 1867, he fell overboard, and he was never found, and his body never recovered. His death led to suspicions of him being murdered, while others said he was probably drunk and fell, comparing it to the rumors that happened shortly after the Battle of Antietam. Meagher's men step off from behind me there in the tree line. He's just across the way. The Irish Brigade is about to make their way out through here in this cornfield. Now, I'm not sure if it was corn out here at the time or if it was wheat, but they're definitely coming out across this farmland that I'm in right now. Walking across this same field, marching shoulder to shoulder towards that bloody lane that's ahead of me. The men that make up this unit out here is the 69th New York, the 29th Massachusetts, the 63rd New York, the 88th New York. Those are the men of that Irish Brigade that's coming across here with Meagher. They're going to fight like hell to get up there and try to find their way to the other side so that they can drive those Confederate soldiers out of that, what seems like an impenetrable position. Eventually, they find a way to make it up over this hill. Now, there was a documentary done on the History Channel a while back. I think it was called Battlefield Detectives. And they wondered why it was such a bloody place for the Irishmen coming across this field. And they discussed the history of Meagher and his nefarious background, if you will. But then they also did a little bit of battlefield detective work with some metal detectors, and they came out here and dug up spent rounds. And what they found was that there were a lot of blind spots out here, and that there were a lot of spots where men were frantic and dropping unspent rounds, cold bullets, if you will, right on the ground. And it was because they were freaked out by the situation that they were in. Those men would be driven back multiple times and have to come back across this field. Now, here in a second, I'm going to turn this camera around so you can see in front of me the hill that I'm climbing just to get to the top here, just to be able to see the objective in front of me and the soldiers that are going to be over there. Eventually, we're going to dip back down again and disappear. So, here we are, Antietam, in the middle of a cornfield. Go figure, right? If you're out here in these places, make sure that you're looking around where you're stepping, because that is definitely one thing I'm doing. Cornfields are very good hiding places for snakes and other animals. So, protect yourself. If you got boots, wear them. These soldiers are now marching through here, and they're coming up in this position. And it's too bad that all this corn's up, because we did a video out here not too long ago. I think it was about a year, maybe 2 years ago, where this field was completely cleared out. And you could see from left to right the entire position that these Irishmen were walking. You could see how the hill rose and then how they sunk down behind a small rise and popped up just before they got to the Bloody Lane. So now, as we're coming up here to the top, you'll see somebody's head poking up from a walk that's happening right in front of us. It's a pretty neat perspective. He's not Confederate. And now that we've traversed the field, we're heading down towards that Bloody Lane. We finally pop up out on the top there, and about maybe a football field's length, we are wide open targets for the Confederates up here, who are going to be pouring volley after volley into us. It's pretty amazing. And here we are. This one's for Ireland, boys. So in that lane right back there, right where that brick wall is, if you will, a colonel fell. His name was Charles II. Charles II was from South Carolina. He had a very ornate sword that was given to him from his graduating class. He graduated top of his class as a cadet in South Carolina. He was mortally wounded back there and had that sword on his lap and was clutching it for dear life. A soldier came up thinking he was dead, grabbed that sword. The man woke up and clutched it to his chest, and that soldier left him alone. Well, eventually the sword was stolen and never returned, and his family languished for a long time wondering what happened to him. But it's supposed that in the picture that Brady took out here on the field in this sunken road, that the man on the end, on the right-hand side, is actually Charles II. And I'll post that picture up here if I can get a good copy of it, so that you can see that photograph of Charles II laying there as one of the dead of Antietam. It's a pretty amazing story, and you can walk right here and be at the place where that happened. So last but not least, right here behind me is Piper's Cornfield. This is where the Confederates are now driven out to. They're going out back across this field, and they have to reorganize and get back with the main body of Confederate soldiers. Artillery is sitting up on the crest line over here at Piper's Cornfield. John Pelham's actually out here somewhere fighting too. And the, not particularly in the Piper's Cornfield, but he's actually out here as an artillerist in Antietam. But these men are back here trying to re-engage the fight that's happening out here for Bloody Lane, and it's a really dangerous situation for them to be out here fighting in this position. And they found out real quick that when overwhelming numbers come to you and you're in a position that seems like it's just the most perfect position ever, where you're covered from being shot at, it can really quickly turn into a desperate fight that will cause you and your pals to die real fast. And unfortunately for those Confederate soldiers, they found out this wasn't the greatest vantage point. So one last time before we push off over here, that position right there, that's where those men were laying in that photograph, and one of them is supposed to be Captain 2. We're going to push off from over here, since we've already had that discussion and conversation about the Irishmen coming across the field, the North Carolinians and South Carolinians fighting here in this position where I'm at right now, and we're going to head down to the bridge and get one good view of that before we wrap up here with this video and put it together. Well, I said I was going to try to get to some of these least visited monuments out here and maybe highlight a few of them. And back there is that 50th Pennsylvania monument that's out here on the field, right across the way from the observation tower, which you can see in the background right there. Now that observation tower was built in the 1890s and is still being used today. It's pretty neat. This monument here is to William McKinley, and we saw a video not too long ago about that. That's over on Vlogging Through History. Chris did an exceptional job telling the story behind the monument and behind the men that inspired that monument, and about its creation and all that good stuff, and even the unit that fought out here that was with him during the Battle of Antietam. So it's pretty cool seeing a video like that with that much detail. And I'll see if I can't post a link to his video here in the description so that you can go over to see Chris's video on Vlogging Through History. Now we're going to head on down to Burnside Bridge now. And if you look up here behind me, just up here, this is where Toombs's men would have been, about 500 and some change, maybe 550, versus about 11,000 Union soldiers. And the reason why they were able to defend this position so greatly was because they were up on this hill. There were trees and boulders all around them. The bridge was like a choke point for the soldiers coming in, and they were sitting up here firing down on top of them as they were trying to get across that bridge. Eventually, men had to come around the other side in order to get up in here and fight against the Georgians in this position. Of course, you can't finish off a trip to Antietam without going to the National Cemetery out here and visiting the over 4,100 soldiers that are buried out here from that conflict. And the largest monument that I know probably is literally the largest monument of the American Civil War on a battlefield. There's that big guy right there at the top. It's huge. Apparently at one point in time when they were trying to transport him, half of him fell off and ended up in the Potomac River. But eventually they got him all back together and they constructed him out here at the cemetery. We're going to try to make our way down towards where hopefully we can find the grave of one of these soldiers that's buried out here that potentially could be buried with his dog. So as I walk this cemetery here, the Antietam National Cemetery, and I make my way back out of here, we're going to head back over to Monocacy, and we're going to go to the location where those special orders were found so that we can create a small video about that. Now, Special Orders 191 was issued by Robert E. Lee. He saw an opportunity to move north after that great victory that he had at the Second Battle of Manassas. And he had already come to mind or thought that he was going to create a situation where he could take advantage of splitting his forces up again and conquer several portions of the Northern Army and take them on, perhaps get the garrison at Harper's Ferry and move some of his soldiers in other directions, and then have them converge together at a location so that he could attack the main body of the army here and maybe pose a threat to Washington, D.C. and have the northern people lose their will and sue for peace. Well, he issues out orders, and orders are sent to every major officer in his unit to be dispatched out to the other officers. And Jackson ends up sending out a set of orders to his subordinate. His subordinate, who's Hill, believes that he has this set of orders he's supposed to have. But an additional set of orders was sent out. And it was there in his camp that those sets of orders were wrapped around a couple of cigars and left in Monocacy in this field. A man named Mitchell comes across them, along with another man. Mitchell is actually wounded over here pretty seriously at the cornfield after being the one that discovered those orders and sending them up through the chain of command. Now, whether or not the chain of command took those things serious enough, who knows? But by midday, the day that it was found, McClellan had those orders in his hand, and he was sending a message back to Washington, D.C. to let them know that he has the very instrument in his hands to destroy Bobby Lee, and if not, he'd be willing to go home himself. So he takes those orders and he starts to maneuver his men. There's only one problem. All the historians in the world packed together still blame McClellan and say that he didn't do enough with those orders in his hands. But we're going to discuss that over there in Monocacy. I couldn't think of a better place to close out my Antietam video than right here at the civilian cemetery across the street from the National Cemetery, where I can see names like Poffenberger and Roulette, Kreitzer, Ruffner, all these names from around the area, people that lived in the area and their ancestors and their relatives, all buried right here at this cemetery. And the reason why I pause here is because when a battle's over with in a town like Antietam or Gettysburg or any place, or a town, Sharpsburg, Maryland, it is these people here that have to suffer the most. They have to deal with the worst. They're not dead or dying, but the dead or dying are left behind. And these folks here have to dig the bodies up and help with the cleanup, help put their town back together. And Antietam or Sharpsburg only got a taste of it. This was the worst single day. Remember, this is one day's battle here at Antietam Creek. Places like Petersburg, Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, those places saw one fight after another, constant combat and warfare, and those towns dealt with this every day for 4 years. But these people here didn't ask for that. They didn't ask for war to come to their doorstep. They didn't ask for the death and destruction that landed here in Sharpsburg. Neither did some of the civilians that are in the South. It's these people that have to suffer the consequences of war, and they tell the stories when it's all over with, but they're also the keepers of this history. If it weren't for some of these people keeping their farms together and telling these stories of what happened here, what they saw, some of those stories might have been lost to time. So to them, we owe a debt of gratitude for keeping this land the way it was, and to organizations like the American Battlefield Trust for buying large plots of lands out here in Antietam, in Sharpsburg. There are many signs that have popped up all around here for old farmsteads that somehow became available, and the American Battlefield Trust was able to purchase it and turn that over to the National Park Service so that more of this amazing, magnificent battlefield could be preserved for all time. I hope you've enjoyed our tour, our little walk around Antietam, if you will, Sharpsburg, and hope you've enjoyed seeing all the different things you can see out here. I've only covered maybe 25% of what there is to see. I didn't have time. I was up here for a day. I just wanted to put something out there for the anniversary of the battle, because I love this place. It's an amazing picturesque kind of battlefield. So until next time, we'll see you out there in the field. This is History with Waffles.